Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Health meeting for Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. The first item on the agenda is reorganization of the board, but we're waiting for one more board member. So why don't we
defer it until he comes back? Maybe we can take after Cherry Blossom. Is that workable?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Or
Yeah.
if he comes before that, we can do that before that too, depending on.
Yeah. All right. Anybody on the meeting that has anything for citizens participation? Mark Tassoni?
Yeah.
Oh.
He needs to unmute himself or he?
Yep.
Good evening.
Hi, Mark.
Last time you guys had a meeting, you were on Google, and I don't get Google, so I missed that one. So I kind of goosed myself on that one. I wanted to ask a little bit about the, if it's okay to, is one of the agenda items about mosquito, the EEE? Is that one of the agenda items tonight?
No.
It is not an agenda item tonight, Mark.
Okay, I want to bring that up because it's been Ashland Bulletin sort of thing saying about the spraying is going to happen soon. Can anybody answer that? In what areas and when it's going to happen? And that's going to be all I have.
So there.
I was just going to say, Laura, if you don't mind chiming in, because I know you got the information for us.
Yeah. So if you go, Mark, if you go onto the Ashland, Mass, in the Board of Health webpage, we have a link to the Central Mass Mosquito Control. And from there, you can see what they're going to do that day. So right now, the dates that they're spraying in July are listed. So if you want to know where they're spraying on one of those days, there's a number that you call in the morning and they'll tell you what roads they're going to. And you can also go to their website and they'll tell you the roads that they're going to be spraying on. And if you want to do an exclusion, you can do that if you want to be excluded from spraying.
I went on the Ashland website page and I saw the small paragraph and I didn't really understand that last part of it about being excluded and stuff like that. I didn't.
Mark, are you looking to get your property sprayed?
Okay, in plan, right to the point. Last year, I think it was they had set it around at night, late at night, a spray truck. That's what I'm asking about.
Well, I was gonna say, I can tell you because I did this myself personally. And what I did is I went right on their website. It's a Central Mass Mosquito Control. I went on their website and there's a request spraying. You put in all your information, your contact information, and then they email you to let you know they received it, let you know that they've looked into the area to make sure it's appropriate to spray. Then they also send you an email before it's sprayed to let you know the day of, and then they send you an email to let you know that it was completed. So it's a very easy process right on their website.
So other than how it was a couple of years ago, last summer, whatever, when it was blocked and at night after 10, 11 o'clock at night and had a whole spray gun around, it's individual properties. Is that what you're saying?
So they'll go to the houses that request spraying, and if there's two houses that are within a few houses of each other, they might do that general area, but they only do the pavement. They don't do any anybody's property unless somebody requested. But they may do pavement in between properties if they're on the same street.
It's a truck mounted spraying system. So exactly what Laura was saying is they, back in your driveway and they would perform the spray from there. They don't get out and walk your property.
Right.
So I saw the governor, I think it was either today or yesterday, he did an announcement with that woman health officer, whatever her name was. was, and they were talking about it. So I was just wondering if the state is going to get involved and find out areas that is infested that won't be risk-free at times. That's another question.
Yeah, we will probably have it on our next few agendas, Mark, because it has been a question. But we'll update you and everybody else as soon as we have all the information.
Okay, done.
All right, Ron has joined us. Hi, Ron.
Hi.
We skipped over reorganization of the board. We wanted to obviously wait for you. So typically how it works is when we do reorganization of the board, well, it doesn't have to be typical. It just usually the vice chair moves up to to chair and so forth and rotates around to give everybody a chance at being chair. Does anybody have any discussion or a Judy? Or
so I think because we're smack dab in the middle of COVID and smack dab in the middle of quite a few issues on the board, I would like to know if this has to be done tonight or can we continue as we are. I think you're doing a great job, Diane, and
thank you, Judy.
I'm hesitant to reorganize in the middle of such chaos at the moment.
You know, one of the things I was going to suggest, Judy, is that in the process of reorganizing that we move to keep the slate as is. In other words, I would nominate Diane to be the chair, myself to be the vice chair, and you to be the clerk, so that things would stay the way they are.
May I?
I know
Yeah,
KG has a point to make.
No. Well, everybody stole my word. Reorganization is a requirement by the policy that we have, but it could be the same person chairing it, but for the same person to be a chair, it needs to be unanimous vote from the board, and that's what the policy says. And if I'm given a chance, I will echo Chris's statement and then do the nomination for the same slate of members as chair, vice chair, and secretary or clerk. If somebody can second that, I will help.
Unless anybody else.
You know, KG, the only thing I'm going to ask you, since I didn't we vote on a couple of years ago because we were having issues that we couldn't have a chair be consecutive, or is that?
That is why I said it has to be unanimous vote unless it's a unanimous vote. That's
Okay.
why I said.
Oh.
Okay. I'll
Judy,
second that, KG.
Judy, before you, well, you can second it. Judy, in the now, I guess this will officially be the conversation. Judy, did I overhear
Yeah.
you say unless somebody else wants to be clerk? No, okay, no, I want to make sure that that's respected. I mean, I nominate you because you did a great job this year and move forward. But if you're uncomfortable being in that position or you'd rather someone
No,
else
I
do it,
didn't know.
and someone
So
wanted to,
I honestly feel really comfortable with how things are right now, not meaning to diss anybody else, but
Yeah.
right now with what we've got on our plate, I really feel I want some consistency.
yeah, no, I support that.
If that's the general consensus, let's make it formal. I propose that Diane be the chairperson for the board and Chris Daniel be the vice chair and Judy Tell be the clerk of the board.
Second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, KG.
Aye, Judy.
All right, Ron.
Right.
I'll thank you now, but maybe not in a month. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. All right. All right.
You just got a big laugh out of my wife, Diane. I heard her from downstairs.
All right. I do see Amy. I know it's not a public hearing, but Amy, do you have anybody else joining you on the meeting, or are you all set so we can discuss it?
I'm by myself right now.
Okay, and you're not expecting anybody else, right?
I think my attorney will be on the screen.
Okay, we're gonna just move on to a couple other items, and we'll just wait until I see your attorney. What's your attorney's name?
Charlie McClan.
Okay.
You can't even take that before anyway, because you listed at 6:30.
Yeah, but it's not a public hearing. So
Oh.
we can move things throughout the agenda, but if she has other people coming to represent her,
Okay.
we'll,
Okay.
excuse me. All right, Ed, do you want to start out? We'll move to, oh, excuse me, no.
You
Mark.
want to get that
Yeah.
well issue stated so the public knows that it's not being heard?
Sure. So I sent last minute and I apologize because today was one of those days, but I asked town council to review the application, so to speak, that was in front of us tonight for the geothermal closed loop test bore well. And she said under our current regulations, you all have the letter, and Cesario, if you need it, I can get it to you. That it does not fall under the Board of Health's current jurisdiction. Again, I apologize for the last minute getting it to you, but we do have it on file. So I am taking it off the agenda and asked the parties not to attend the meeting. So that's the reason for that. Anybody have any questions about that?
Nope.
Okay. Just information, because I honestly learned a little bit or a lot about this because I talked to the well driller. It's pretty fascinating. So the Mendez School, they are going to have a monitoring well, I'll reference it as, on their property to help design I should say, the heating and cooling system for the new school. I don't know, technically exactly how it works, but they said that when the school is actually built, there may be, up to 30 wells on the property to help with the heating and cooling system. So, I mean, it might be something that we need to take a look at in the future. It might be something that's up and coming. So we can, talk to Mark and we can always meet on that and maybe make some changes to the regs if that's appropriate. So moving right along. Mark, do you want to talk about the new food code program? We'll move to item number 6. We'll wait for Cherry Blossom.
Mark has muted himself, is it?
Mark Gorham, that was you.
I don't even see him on mine.
He's the iPhone.
It says iPhone, that's Mark.
He's muted himself, so.
All right.
I can jump in on that if we need to.
Yeah, well, I was just going to give a quick overview. So I know that the board approved moving forward with the program. Mark had some scheduled time off, so Ed reached out to the company. We got the contract signed. We got the grant. So if you want to take it from there, Ed, I know you've been using it and sending us COVID reports.
Yeah. So that's the free version portion. So last week, Diane, obviously, and I worked back and forth to get the contract signed with Lisa Mead, making sure everything was good in the contract. Lisa just had a couple of minor changes, which Food Code Pro accepted. So then what happened was yesterday, Food Code Pro sent us some initial startup documentation that they needed. So that's something I actually had Laura work on yesterday. Laura filled out a spreadsheet for Food Code Pro with all of our restaurants in it with some data, because what Food Code Pro is going to do to help Tom and Mark is they're going to preload the system with all of our restaurants. So initially, all the initial screens will just be drop down. And I do want to thank Laura. I called her over the weekend. I said, I need you to come in on Monday because I need to get this done. And, Laura worked most of the day on that and getting other documents that they needed. But so what they are doing now is they are preloading the system. And probably my gut is most likely either Thursday or Friday, they're going to send us some potential training dates next week. And obviously, we'll invite the entire board, Tom and Mark. It'll be a webinar. It's a 1-hour training. And the other thing I just want to make sure everybody is aware of, last week, Paul Carpenter, our IT director, and I had a conversation with Food Code Pro to make sure it meets all of our security standards, where the documents are going to be stored. And Paul was 100% on board with everything at the end of the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Mark, are you on? I didn't know if you wanted to add anything or say anything about the program. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, no, I'm here, and I think it's a great idea. It will bring us up to the level we were trying to seek. There were other vendors, but Tom and I reviewed them over the past year or so, and the other vendors, they offered good products as well, but couldn't beat the grant that they offered here. So it works out well, and hopefully will continue to work out well. And obviously, thanks to Ed as well for being part of it.
I have a question for Ed. Can
Go
I?
ahead. Yep.
Yeah. The thing is that I do need the start and the end time of every inspection that goes on, because that gives you a good assessment of how much time that we need to spend, and then maybe at a later time will give us a measurement for how much of the food inspection time that we need to allocate in the budget and other stuff. So that used to be the case on a paper product that they had before, which Mark has used. It's an yellow sheet that I've seen, and they mark the start time and the end time. So these data must be secure in each inspection that you do, it, whether it's for COVID or for food inspection.
Yeah, and KG, I'm not 100% sure where that's documented, but I can send them an email tomorrow and ask that question.
Yeah, sure. The form should be able to modify and design for our own needs.
Yep.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions about the program?
Do they have any online user manuals that they have?
So we don't have access to the full site yet. They actually contacted Laura today to get Mark and Tom's information to start creating their user accounts. So I'm sure they've been working on it the last 2 days.
All right.
And
KG's ready to hack the code already.
No, not the code, but I just want to look at it, the manuals, and see what capabilities are there in other than that, and then see how we can best use it. That's all.
do you have a question?
So I'm really excited about the new food Crow. Sorry, it feels like a
Code
tongue
Crow.
twister. Because it's going to give us the ability to post every single inspection online. So I'm wondering, Ed, if you had discussions with Paul Carpenter about doing what Uxbridge does, in that we need someplace on the website to put all this information so the public can see it. And then moving forward, I don't know if this is Mark or Tom, but moving forward, coming up with a date to start perhaps using the grading system for restaurants, so that we can provide those ABCs to the front door of establishments, so that we'll know
I would
how they did.
assume, because this program, that's exactly what it does on each inspection report, we would roll it out right from the get-go.
Right from the get-go?
The whole,
So don't we have to kind of let the restaurants know that they're going to get an actual, grade, and that are we going to be asking them to post them on their doors like we had discussed earlier?
What I would suggest, just from general protocol with bringing in new software from my experiences at the shop, is to maybe look at that piece, start tracking it immediately, have it on paper so that we can review it internally. But I would make that public, probably say 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. That gives us that period of time to not only tell the public to expect it, but also to test to make sure it actually works properly.
Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Judy,
Ed, just hold on one second. I mean, because of everything going on, or with everything that has been going on, I think we should roll out the grading system sooner than later. Now, I know we have to get used to the program and so forth, so maybe it's a month, but I think, of course, our next discussion is going to be Cherry Blossom, that if that's what it takes to make people a little bit more aware of their surroundings at this point, I think we absolutely need to do it like right away. So why don't we keep it on the agenda for the next meeting, because obviously there's going to be training and so forth, and then we'll see if we need a rollout period, and we maybe should just notify the establishments now that we're coming, we're doing it. So we can notify them that there will be a new system. It will be a grading system, and they will be posted publicly for anybody to view. Because
So
we
if
know,
you're going to a restaurant, you can, so are we saying if you go to a restaurant, you can go to the website like they do in Uxbridge and see where they're, you know, where they passed or if they failed anything and what those things were with photos right next to it for the public to make a decision whether they want to go there or not. But are we going to roll out anything that's going to give a grading system like in LA where it goes on the front door and you know before you walk in there, you don't have to go to a website, how they did on their last health inspection?
yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm not feeling, I think you're talking about like they have like an A in the window or something, right? I mean, I guess we could talk about rolling that program out and maybe Tom can speak on that. But I believe when we looked at the actual system, when you fill in the, you know, that's compliant, non-compliant, it actually grades that inspection report.
Yeah.
We would have to figure out, I mean, Tom, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, and this is also keep in mind in the midst of this, the code now mandates restaurants to facilitate a copy of their most recent inspection report to the public upon request. So anybody theoretically can go into any restaurant by law and ask for the manager and say, I need to see a copy of your last health inspection. They're also supposed to have signage that pertains to that, that's visible to the public as well. And then I would suggest if you're going to go forward with the grading system that there be a fee structure kind of aligned with that, in the sense that if somebody has repetitious issues and then it affects their letter grade, I think that the town should be compensated for that extra inspection or
Go
extra
back and forth. Yeah.
occur, in order for them to bring themselves back up to par and get them up to the letter grade that they should be at. And I also want it to be directly linked to the importance of adherence to the sanitary code and the expectations that we have, and not just about, oh, I want to get an A or I want to get not about the grade itself, but about what's behind the grade and what the purpose of it is.
Tom, could you work on putting together, I'll call it a proposal, but just put maybe a timeline or what, a rollout plan and that we could look at maybe at the next meeting. And then we can,
The other thing is that if an establishment got downgraded, how do you know that they're going to put the downgraded grade rather than the old grade? So we need to make sure that's also.
Yeah, and I think those are things that we should, should
review those things and keep that on 80 and then find out.
This is why, Diane, I would suggest having some, and I think your point is really good. We should maybe accelerate it, but it's why you need some period of time, because all these different things come up. Looking at another thing, right? What if an inspector inadvertently checks the wrong box on the report and it affects the grade? How do we manage that? Or, there's those little things we need to figure out how to work out.
My understanding is they take a picture of anything that's non-compliant, so that's documented right next to that check mark.
Yeah, but that also gives an incentive for the owner to review the inspection report.
Sure.
This is from Mark and Tom. For us as a board, can we just set that policy for those establishments, or what do we need to do for protocol to establish a grading system? And I respect the fact that if you don't know, just say, I don't know, we can look into it. But I just didn't know if we just have a public meeting and.
Well, I think again, I think it should, I know we have the tool to issue non-criminal fines that we use occasionally at this point. And then to go to KG's point about what if a person gets a bad grade and they don't post it. I know in other jurisdictions that, for instance, in Boston, it's a non-criminal fine of $500 a day if they don't affix it to a visible, conspicuous area. And again, I think it needs to be directly correlated with what the standards that we expect and what the code mandates for these restaurants to follow. I think even without the grading system, the fact that these reports are being pushed up to the website instantaneously is going to start to shape people up a little bit too, having that knowledge that this information is more readily available to the public.
Yeah, I agree.
It's going to motivate folks to do the right thing.
But we can always internally grade and put it on our website, which.
Yeah, that's what we. Yeah,
that we can definitely do that. Issuing one for them and making sure that they put it every time when they change grade or upgrade, downgrade, whatever it is that they need to display. That we need to think through it, and maybe, as Chris said, hold on for 3 months and then review
Yeah,
all the pros and cons and find out how best we can come up with a proper solution for it.
right. And I think if Tom puts together a plan for us that we can look at, so we know, and then we can take it from there.
Just two more quick things. When I spoke to the health director in Uxbridge, he actually, what they did before they went live, he told me they actually offered all of their restaurants a training, what the software is going to do and how the grade's going to be generated. And they said they did it as a Zoom meeting, and he said they had almost everybody participated because they wanted to see what the new software was going to do and show them.
Great idea.
And then just to answer Judy's question from before, Judy, we use Civic Plus for our website, and there's a document center. So, and I already talked to Paul, it's not an issue to get everything right onto the website.
Thank you.
And I think Ed's point was a well-taken point. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Mark.
No, I was going to say, Ron, Ed brought out a good point. I think we do want to, when we go to the grade system, it's something new for them. The whole system will be new for them. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to do what Uxbridge did, and that is to roll it out and to include our vendors. I think it's important they know that there's a new program out there. This is how it's going to work. And I think it would be advisable that we do that with our vendors.
This is, I don't know if Judy knows this, but for maybe Mark and Tom. So this program apparently gives us a straight numerical grade from 0 to 100. How is that going to translate into an A, B, and C? Is it 90 and above is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, and anything below that is a C? How does that work?
I think that's probably, in my opinion, that's what most people think of when they think of those letters.
Okay.
But you can ask the two professors present.
Yeah, I just don't know.
No, but I think that's information.
We have a grade scale that we can send it to you.
A sliding scale.
Yes, we have a scale. I think it's used.
I have a document with that information from other jurisdictions that do it. We can compile those and see.
Hey, Chris, we have a competing professor here.
All right, everybody, it's 6:30. I do see Charlie, who is Amy's attorney, on the Zoom meeting, and I know Amy is here as well.
Can we see them, or I can't see them?
They're here. Can you see that they're here? The names. They're not doing video, which is fine. They don't have to.
So if they appeared before our meeting, they would be live. So I'm just wondering why we don't see them.
Do you want to see them? Look at this, Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Charlie.
You can see me.
So.
Me?
There you go.
Hi, Amy.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
So I'm just going to start out because I was involved with this when it started. Charlie, I'm assuming you were brought up to speed, but we'll give you a little overview.
Diane, you want to unmute him?
I think you need to unmute Charlie.
I can ask him, but I can't unmute him.
There's a little microphone.
Oh, there he goes. He's got it.
Good. Yep. So I was called out. I guess it was a week ago yesterday. Tom, please correct me on things.
June 29th.
About 8 p.m. For unsanitary conditions at Cherry Blossom. Tom, the food inspector, was there, and Sergeant Berman, who is our COVID compliance officer, was there as well. I guess to back up just a little bit, just to let you know that the fire department was there that day, and that is what they notified us, that they had a smoke issue from a walk that day. So when I got there, just for the public record, I was eating food from there when I got the call. Okay. So we went down there, and before we even entered the building, the catch basin in the parking lot appeared that there was grease on it. We walked into the kitchen, and it was totally unacceptable, the conditions the kitchen was in. Tom walked me through some of the violations. I'm not a food inspector. He pointed things out to me, and a lot of it was very evident. I think I can probably say all surfaces in the kitchen had grease, film on it all, on the floor. I just have to tell, it was filthy, absolutely filthy. The hood vents were dripping with, literally dripping with grease. Excuse me, literally dripping with grease. There was food that was stored that was improperly labeled, not even labeled at all. Forget about improperly labeled. So it was improperly stored, improperly labeled. There was a small rodent issue, which, you know, that was addressed. So I'm addressed that. There was food in the storage room that wasn't stored off the floor. Things weren't covered that were supposed to. I just, the list goes on. I was, needless to say, and I know Amy and I spoke many times over the last week, I was appalled that this establishment was open and did not close themselves. That night, Tom, you know, he's the expert. He said, we can't allow it to continue to operate, so we closed them down. Again, I believe it was 2 days later, we got called back to do a reinspection. Again, the three of us went for the reinspection. We walked in and it was very little improvement, very little. So we went over the violations again, made a suggestion that they bring in a professional company to clean, which they did. And we went back 4th of July on Saturday, 10:30. And we walked in, and I have to say, and I give them credit now, it was spotless, because they hired this company to come in and steam all the grease off, everything. It looked like we want it to look every day. And I'm very passionate about this because I saw it with my own 2 eyes. A lot of people with this COVID going on have cleaned their establishment and took the time because they were slow to clean. I don't know what happened, but I can tell you that from the 5 of us, plus Mark and Tom, this will not happen again. Amy is brought in front of us tonight because this is totally unacceptable that she allowed it to happen, that she allowed her establishment to open on her own, and that it continued. I understand that there's been different vendors that have been called in to help with pest management, again, the cleaning. They jetted out the line in the driveway and cleaned that because that discharges to the Sudbury River. I call DEP. It's not acceptable to be dumping anything down any catch basin. So now, since I went on my rant about my frustration, I wanted Amy to be here to explain to the board. We don't necessarily need to talk about how it happened because clearly it was neglect, but we want to know publicly what you're going to do to prevent this from happening again. Whichever one of you want to speak is perfectly fine.
Amy, you can go first.
Okay. My name is Amy Harden. I'm the manager of the restaurant. And I truly feel so sorry about everything happened at the restaurant. And on the June 29th, and one of my employees is very careless and put the oil in the wok and light it up and forgot the fire is on and caught on the fire. And he used a cover to cover up the oil from the wok, and the black smoke, it just come in, poured it out. And that is the time my bartender went in right away and used a fire extinguisher and pulled it off. That time is a lot of smoke coming from from the air. And so that is a lot of grease because it's oil. It's a lot of grease filling on the floor, at the wall, and all the kitchen area. It's a lot of grease. And that, when they call me, I was on the way to them, and it took me 35 minutes to go to the restaurant. And that time I met the fire department, David. He said, Amy, everything is been, it been clean at the wall and the floor too. So I said to David, I said, then do you call the health department? And he said he did. And I said, what did they say? And he said, well, you clean and then you'll be able to open. I might misunderstood him. Okay, then I opened that day after we clean up. When the incident happened, everybody is so nervous, and we try to clean as much as we can. So they wash the floor, they wash the wall, and use the hose, use the hot water. And I think that when Diane see the water and the grease in the parking lot, and that is when they wash the floor and also the foam from the fire extinguishers outside too. So, and that's, I think that is a lot of things happen that day is because a lot of grease on the ground and also on the wall. And so I usually have a company to come every 3 months actually, 3 months to clean the hood. And the person clean the hood is closed for 100 days because of COVID-19. And so I call them right away. And I say, I call them before this incident happened and they are not answer the phone. So I call right after the Monday and they still not open. And I try to call some other people to try to clean the hood. And then nobody available that time. So I finally get a friend of mine and recommend someone, they've been cleaning their hood. And then they finally came on Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock. And they cleaned till 9 o'clock. And the hood being clean, but the floor is still very greasy and dirty. And because they use a high heat, the heating gun to clean the hood. So everything is spills. So the wall and the floor and even the equipment is all kind of greasy. And they told me their responsibility is just clean the hood only. So when Mr. Ed told me they have a cleaning company, a professional cleaning company, and I called them and they say the only time you can clean all this wall for the grease and the floor is professional hot steam cleaning. And I find the person always clean my hood, and he supposed to set up a schedule, clean the hood on Saturday for me. Instead of cleaning the hood, he come and clean the wall, the floor, and all the equipment with the hot steaming clean. So that's the reason why I asked for I called Diane, I say, I think that time we are ready to have an inspection on Saturday, July 4th. And they are very kind to come on the July 4th holiday to re-inspect the place.
Amy, one thing I just want to jump in here too, just because I want to make sure Laura did a very nice spreadsheet for us. And one of the things that we were talking to you about on Saturday with your other co-owner was in the past, the board required you to have, again, Tom, correct me if Tom's still on. Yep, there is. It required you to have training for all of your employees, because looking at the history of the reports, a lot of the violations that I'm seeing here on this is regarding to food storage. So, yeah, Judy,
can we share this somehow with everybody? I
think Chris knows how to do it.
Hang on, I don't have this. I don't have access to it. You got to do it,
I
Diane.
can try and share it. Do you want me to try and share that?
Yeah, I think it really tells a story. I guess, I'm
Because
so
the
sorry.
host disabled screen sharing, so I don't know if whoever the host is can enable that for me.
Yeah.
That's me. What do I do? I'm sorry.
Can I say something?
Enable me to share my screen.
So Diane, all you have to do is make Tom a co-host. So
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, Diana, if I can say something
Of
as
course.
well. Amy, I don't know you personally. I haven't eaten in your restaurant in 15 years because I had a bad experience there at that time, but that's irrelevant. But I'm not an expert. I'm not a food inspector, but I read the reports and I saw the pictures. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on something, because based on what you just said, the incident you just said, I'm understanding that you're saying that the result of the inspection that caused the board to an emergency shutdown was completely the result of a single incident that happened. And if that's the case, Tom, is that even possible?
What?
Because it looks to me like much more neglect than that.
So no, it's not possible. And we've worked multiple times in the past with this establishment. We've encountered repeat violations of similar nature many times. In November of 2018, this board mandated Amy to provide additional training for her staff, which she did. She brought in a consultant. Even inspections thereafter, we've encountered some similar issues. In this most recent instance, certainly sanitary conditions are part of it. Cleanliness is part of it, but it's also procedural and basic food safety practices. Like we encountered some chicken that was stored. If you can see on my screen right here, this is cabbage right here. There's cases of chicken stored next to that. That is not allowed. That's called separation segregation violation by version of the code. So chicken juice was dripping.
So Tom, right now the failed inspection items are up.
Right.
So if you want to use the screen to show other things, I'm not seeing what you're talking about.
Oh, oh, you're not seeing the screen I'm sharing right now?
So failed inspection items is what I see.
Okay.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. Do you want me to speak to that, or
I want you to, well, you started saying you have pictures of the chicken. So
I do.
Okay. Do you want to share them on the screen?
Sure. I had them up on the screen. You can't see them?
No, why can't I?
Okay.
I can't.
Did anybody else see that?
No.
Okay.
No. You know what? I want to actually, I mean, because I think.
Let's talk about one thing at a time. Let's talk about the spreadsheet we have up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we collectively know there's an issue. We could go into this, but I'd actually like to hear what Charlie has to say, since she asked him to join the meeting.
Okay. I think that when Amy was speaking, she was not suggesting that what else occurred there was a result of that. She started with her sincere regret, shock, as well as she was by what the board found. She then went into the efforts that she made to try to get it sparkling clean. But the other items, she has retrained. And for example, some of the things that occurred, my understanding is she asked to wait so she could be there and go through with the inspection, because she would be the person that could have produced the other certificates and items. However, there's no dispute that that premise should not have been that way. She has been there for 29 years. As a result of this, she has met with all of her staff, has designated additional people, the bartender and the takeout person, to ensure that food is not left out, but it goes back into the cooler. I did see the photographs, and certainly, I will tell you, I've eaten there for 29 years. So I have been a very steady customer, at least once, sometimes twice a week. I certainly was dismayed at the conditions I saw. But what has happened as a result of this is that you saw the work that was done on the cooler, the datings, and again, they have dates, they are off the floor. Things should have been taken out and just tossed away that were stored in there. All of that has occurred. As I said, we have now designated backup people to go in and ensure that the kitchen is adhering to all of the food safety. And as far as the hand sanitizing and all of those things, I have photographs. There are 2 wash sinks in the line. They both, now I wasn't there, so I can't say they didn't have paper towels, but it's clear that they have been there forever. But they have all been filled. And again, at the start of the shift, they will be inspected to make certain all of the materials to keep the area clean and hand washing as well. And somebody will have the duty of checking to make certain that the stock is all placed back. And it's not a justification, but in food service, things start happening quickly, things don't get put back, and neglect causes to remain there. There will be no neglect. At the end of the shift, the chef will be responsible for going through the cooler and making certain everything was in the place that you saw it when you were there on July 4th. She has been recertified. The other certificates, I believe, have been produced, and asked to accept deep, deep apologies and regret for what it is. So they have taken steps, they have cleaned, and they have labeled everything and do not intend to falter on her commitment to continue to operate. She has spoken to her partners. I had some photos, but I don't think you need the, as I said, I saw the bowl that I was certainly shocked that the bowl was in that condition. But I believe that she has made a firm commitment going forward to keep it in the pristine condition it's in.
So, question?
Sure. I can't give you any secret recipes, but
No.
I'll answer any other questions.
So you can see by the spreadsheet in front of us, Charlie, why we're more upset about this. It's not just this one time. There seems to be a history of some, offenses here that some of which, especially during COVID, my understanding is that from the documentation I have in front of me, that on May 7th and on June 1st, that a COVID inspection was performed there and they were in substantial compliance. Now, I do know that on 5/7, the rules were a bit different than on 6/1, but none of this on, what was it, the 19th?
29th, I think it was.
The 29th, yes.
29th, excuse me. Yep.
None of this was there on the 29th, a mere 28 days later. So how anybody could be surprised and shocked that we're upset perplexes me.
She was not suggesting that she's surprised and shocked at the board. She is talking about her personal regret.
Okay.
Sometimes there's a response to a question doesn't quite come across as the speaker and to those who hear it, but she's taken full responsibility for the condition that the board saw. She accepts that, and again, this is the first time I've seen the spreadsheet, so it's a little difficult for me to respond to each one. Yeah. But I do truly understand the significance of the food prep, the food safety, and the temperature. And rather than attempting to say, well, this might happen, that might happen, the answer is it's not going to happen. And it has been reinforced with all of the staff and
So
asking the waitresses as well. You go in there and see something, make sure it gets put back in the cooler.
One
So
thing also,
my next question was that I'm not sure. It looks like, you know, if we were there June in 2019 and then we were there in June in 2020, maybe everybody even knows when we're coming. So we have to change that up a bit. And that's something we'll have to talk about internally. But my other concern is that the outside storm drain into the Sudbury River that Diane was referring to earlier. This wasn't, I saw photos, and this wasn't just the grease off the floor going from the grease fire. In my uneducated opinion, it looked like a lot more than that. Plus it had to be pumped out, my understanding, and the DEP had to be called. So I'm wondering if you have some kind of information about that, if the EPA has gotten back in touch with you, or if there's
I can add to that as well. I did want to mention, and I apologize for not mentioning it, is that our local Department of Public Works came out and it took a sample of it in the morning. So I'll call it the level or the amount of grease that was in there, that will be determined. I have not gotten the results yet. Amy felt that the mop water from the floor was dumped into there. It definitely looked more to me. That's why, of course, we called in the professionals. And also the DEP is requiring Amy to get a licensed site professional to determine if there was any impact on the Sudbury River. So those two things, the good thing is those two things are going to take care of itself. But I noticed there's a cone in the parking lot since, and I'm assuming that's to remind people not to use the catch basin for anything. I'm making an assumption.
Yes.
And to respond to the issue of the storm drain, I haven't seen any photographs of the storm drain, but I do know that they came in, they pumped it out, they went on the other side, pumped it out, cleaned all the stuff in between, and had someone come out, and they were required to submit a clean bill of health within 60 days, I believe. So she has addressed all of those things immediately. And again, I can't tell you what was going on there. All I can tell you is that at the moment, we have called people in. I know that this is a constant issue. I remember probably 10 or 15 years ago, the issues about the grease traps and all of those things. So she certainly does understand the significance of being beside that river.
So,
Tom, you
Yes.
I was just going to ask Tom. Tom, do you, besides more frequent inspections, do you have any recommendation where the board should go with this? Or Mark as well? I mean, Mark, I can't see it on the screen.
I actually wanted to say on this one before Tom or Mark comes in.
Okay.
The issue is I looked at the limited set of reviews, the inspection reports. I find that the CFM was present at these times and the same repeated event is happening. And also I looked at their number of hours of operation as well as the working times of the CFM that they have. The overall number of hours they're open is longer than the one full-time 60-hour CFM there. So Mark had an idea. Mark had an idea about a year and a half back, saying that we should require all the restaurants to have 2 CFMs to cover the entire opening hours, and that might help because if you have one or the other one will look at it, we have 2 eyes to look at it, so that might be helpful. So that's another thing that one may want to consider. Plus, you may want to have the CFM get trained more.
They did. I think we got an email with somebody additionally. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was maybe Danny. Did get certified as well. So I think we got another one recently. And then we can talk about that, KG, as a board separate than this.
Sure.
Mark, do you want to add anything? I know.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, KG, as well. That's a point I was trying to bring across, and hopefully someday we'll get to that point as we continue with the grading system and see how this new program works, and hopefully having a certified food manager on staff whenever they're open to prepare or serve food, I think is very important, and other towns like Burlington do require that. In respect to Cherry Blossom, we'll stay on that subject. They obviously have been inspected and will go on a very increased schedule of inspections. I saw Amy today. I returned from vacation. She was my first stop to talk with her about various issues, explain the very serious consequences of putting anything in the storm drain, which we've had that discussion before, and she is aware of that. And so hasn't Tom had that discussion, as well as running an appropriate kitchen. And I know Amy wants to be a player here and a good player, and we want her to be that. We would just hope that she will bring in the knowledgeable people to keep the kitchen as it was seen on July 4th onward as promised. And I think her attorney noted that. So we'll expect that. And if not, unfortunately, I did tell Amy there will be some serious consequences, because in Mass General Law, under the food codes, the Board of Health can remove a license for repetitive violations. And that's the last thing we want to think about. But as I explained to her, it's like having a license to drive a trailer truck. You're specialized. It could have been a bus. It's a very specialized license, and we depend on the person that carries that license for the appropriate, in the case of a truck trailer driver. In this case, Amy is the driver, and she needs to assure that all the procedures are being followed. So she was very sincere during our visit, and Tom was on the phone. So we had Tom on the phone, and I was there with Amy. And there are some things that are still pending. The grease outside that drips from it's like a tube, does have to be addressed. And she said she would look into that. And again, I want her to know we're here to help her, but she has to help herself as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And I do appreciate you going back there. I know Mark is trying to enjoy some time off, and we're hounding him about things. So I appreciate it. What I was wondering, and I'm going to rely on you, Mark, again, is that can we, because of the repetitive violations, can we require her to have a CFM on staff at all times, to opening times?
I would suggest that.
Again, this is up for discussion from the board. What about because let's even just do the catch basin again. I mean, to me, it's common sense that you don't pour anything down a catch basin, but clearly somebody felt otherwise. I think we should have the staff retrained again. I mean, she said she talked to them, but again, looking at most of this stuff on here, I think it's they could be educated again on what the food handling prep, because it just wasn't. I mean, the fact is that even though there was items that were in the refrigerator, they weren't even labeled. And then even when we went back for the third inspection, they were labeled, which is appropriate, but they weren't dated, and it didn't, like, it said it in Chinese, which is fine. They can read that. But so I think there's still a lack of knowledge. And I do agree with what Mark said. I'm taking this very serious because I know all of us do, but our names are on that license.
No.
And I wish I knew. I really do. I wish I knew. It can't get like this again. It won't.
Diane,
Can I have a quick question on?
Go ahead, Judy.
Were you going, Chris?
I was, but you can go first.
I just want, Mark, when you just said, you just said we've had discussions about that before, Amy, about the storm drain. Has this come up on previous inspections?
It was a while back, Judy, but I know Tom and I spoke to Amy this afternoon, and Tom even has had that discussion with her, because it's too easy to not note that the top of the storm drain grates are oily. And we continue to remind her, you cannot put any wastewater of any type, mop water, whatever it might be, into that storm drain. That is strictly for rainwater. So it's been through the years, I would say. So I would call that repetitive violation.
Has that been documented?
It goes back for me many years. Tom, do you know offhand if you documented it?
That's
I
many
s-
years
I
ago,
certainly-
before Tom,
I
though.
didn't document it because I didn't really see the conditions that I encountered in this most recent inspection surrounding that storm drain, but it's hard not to notice that the storm drain is literally outside the back door of the restaurant. So naturally, it's something that we're going to bring up, and just to reiterate the fact that we, or ask the question, do you dump things down there? Please don't dump things down there, and just kind of make it clear to them that that isn't something that's acceptable. And then I noticed Amy had mentioned while she was talking that they may have been dumping water down there after they had cleaned the floor. So the code explicitly states that, you're supposed to have a mop sink, and that's what you use a mop sink for. So, nothing, whether it be grease from the violators or wastewater from a mop bucket, absolutely nothing but rainwater, as Mark said, should be dumped into that catch basin. And I documented a violation more recently on that for conveying of sewerage, which is in the code, because it was hard not to notice it. And then many of the times that I do conduct inspections there, it's after dark. So I usually don't have the opportunity to have the inspection done during daylight hours. So I got a good look at it this time, and it was very clear that it had been stuff thrown in there. So that's why it was cited on the inspection.
Thank you.
You know,
DEP should have some records of this anyway.
something I want to mention is, we've talked a lot about all of these disturbing things, and I look at the past history, and it's really, really troubling to all of us. I don't think anyone, including Charlie and Amy, would disagree with that. We can't change the past, right? So
We have to look in the future, and I will
right.
guarantee everything will be correct.
So Amy,
And
if I could interrupt you for 1 second,
Yes,
I'll give you
of
an
course.
opportunity to definitely give you an opportunity to follow up afterward. So, and I thank you, Charlie, for being here and for clarifying certain things. Mark, I think Mark Gorham and Tom said it best, that moving forward, the past is going to be an essential part of how we move forward in terms of what's within our right to inspect and to enforce, the legal aspects of your inspections. But more importantly, we can sit there and tell you need to have someone that's trained as a food manager on staff. But if that food manager isn't really interested in doing their job correctly and well, that's not going to help you. I think part of your problem, Amy, it might not just be an information thing. It might be a management or a human resources problem as well. And maybe as a suggestion, you want to look into getting some outside consultants to come in and look at your staff. And because if somebody does not want to do their job, but does not like their job, they're not going to do it well. Charlie brought up a really good point. And it's not just in restaurants, but more so in restaurants. When a bad habit starts, it kind of compounds on itself very quickly. So, and there's also something that Judy brought up, was a very good point, is the consistency of our inspections are such that you can kind of guess when you're going to be inspected. That's kind of an off branch of something called the Hawthorne effect, where if you know you're being watched, you're going to act differently than if you don't know you're going to be watched, right? So if you're committed, Amy, if you're truly committed, like you say, and like Charlie says that you are, and I believe you because I have no reason not to today, right? If you're truly committed, then every single day when you put the key in the door to open that restaurant, make believe we're coming to inspect you and make sure that it looks the way it should look, not because you're going to be inspected, because that's what you as an owner of that establishment is proud to say, that you're going to put food in the stomachs of your customers that comes from a good place, and you're going to treat them with the respect. It's disrespectful to your customer. In the case, I'm sure that incident you described with the fire was extremely anxiety ridden. It was probably chaotic, but you as a responsible restaurant owner should have closed your door on that day and not reopened until you were certain that everything was clean and could have passed inspection. And I don't want to speak for Tom or Mark, so if I speak out of turn here, in the case where something like that happens and you are uncertain I suspect you could probably give us a call and get some assistance. That would go much further than us coming in for an inspection and seeing the result and having to take an action. So if you're truly committed, let all of the past be an indicator of what not to do, and live up to your commitment to move forward. If it's something you don't want to do, that's fine too, but don't open your restaurant then.
Chris, and just to add on what you said, because we can sit here and berate them. I think, they're obviously know that, that they need to clean things up. In 5 days, almost, all the red X's basically that were out of compliance or in compliance. So, and I like what you said about, you kind of have to police yourself. If you, do you run a red light at 3 o'clock in the morning, or do you stop at it, just because, like you said, nobody's watching. But I think, both Amy and Charlie know what their responsibilities are. You can easily see, 1 through 21, at least on this page, everything that needs to be in compliance. So all you have to do is go down that thing. So to me, we can't tell them how to run the business. It's incumbent upon them to know the food code laws and to respect those. And then it's up to Tom, which he did very well, as well as Mark, to enforce those. All we can do is react to what they do. We can't force them to comply. So I think that's, from what Diane was saying before, to ask Tom and Mark, what are the things that we can do to try to ensure more compliance? Is it monetary fines? Is it temporarily closing it if we see repeated violations? What can we do to try to make sure that compliance is followed through with, other than you coming back, Tom, and saying, well, look, these things are out of compliance, I'm going to come in and inspect you again, and then nobody cares because there's no other significant repercussion.
If I can jump in, KG, I'll give you a minute to speak. I just had a question for Mark and Tom about that as well. Because I agree, I think, if you're into running a successful business and keeping it clean, you'll do it no matter what it takes. So I think, training, consultants, these things, I don't know that they're going to help, the management there. But what I wanted to know from Tom and Mark is that with this food code, we do have a right to issue non-criminal dispositions for each violation. Is that correct?
That's correct. And this, just to touch on the reoccurrence of an inspection that's happened to be around the same time last year as opposed to this year. So we conduct unannounced inspections. So that instance was purely coincidental. And the inspection reports speak to that, because if they knew I was coming, there wouldn't be the plethora of violations that were on those reports. So the inspections are always unannounced, and certainly we want to encourage the business not to be reactive, but be proactive. So it shouldn't be, I'm going to clean my restaurant after the health inspector cited me for a litany of violations. It should be, I want to maintain my business in my restaurant in good sanitary condition all the time and train my staff to do that correctly. So when the inspector does come, I can work as a partner with them rather than an adversary. When I walk into a situation like this, my head was spinning. That's why I had to call in Ed Berman and Diane as witnesses, and I was in touch with Mark. Well, even though he was on vacation, he was kind enough to be in touch with me on the phone, just to kind of take it all in. And I think moving forward, certainly more frequent inspections for this establishment. Absolutely a food consultant to come in and retrain the staff again for the second time, because that's happened a couple of years ago. We mandated that. So I don't know where the disconnect is, but as Ron pointed out, it's really the onus of the business to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So definitely more frequent inspections, and certainly the entertainment of issuing fines if it doesn't happen, and then absolutely more administrative action. And as Mark alluded to earlier, finally, and God forbid, a revocation of the license to operate. I mean, it's something we want to avoid. It's not something we we do. Closing down a restaurant is not something that I do often in my profession. I can honestly say I try every attempt to work with somebody before I close their business and inflict upon their livelihood. But in this scenario and in this case, what we encountered was completely unacceptable, and hopefully it doesn't happen again.
And I can add to that, Tom. And as I told Amy, that's our last resort, is to have to revoke the license. But there's some other areas. There will be additional fees for those inspections. Amy was advised of that today, and that's in our fee schedule, as well as this isn't the first time, not just with Amy, but others, and we have required the food training, so that's very common. We've also required that they keep cleaning schedules, sanitation logs, and other types of logs to keep them on track on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis, depending on what type of cleaning is. It could be deep cleaning once a week. We do the same thing right now in respect to COVID for bathrooms. So the cleaning schedules and other schedules will be part of that as well, but the training and the additional inspections, and that way when we go in, I'm sure Amy's going to be very proud to show us her logs, might it be even the grease trap logs, and very happy to show us the results of all this work that she is doing and planning to do.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, thank you, Mark. And I've been doing that for so many years, and we keep on doing the whatever we have to do. And I keep the grease locked, and even the town, when they collect all the book at the end of the year, and they say, Amy, you did the most, and you did a real good job for all the grease recording and everything else. So, and I would never let this happen again. And and we'll be we will be ready for the inspection anytime when Tom comes. Okay, that I guarantee it.
Amy, I appreciate immensely you coming before us tonight. I believe 100% that you're sincere, and I look forward to never seeing you before the board again.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, thank you, Miss Judy. Yeah.
I do have the recipe for the fortune cookies. I can share that with you later.
Maybe the Mai Tais. I'm kidding.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you very much for Mark and also Tom. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for everybody tonight.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Charlie.
Okay. So are we all set?
I guess so.
I believe so. Diane, you're muted.
You're
Diane.
muted, Diane.
Diane.
I'm just having a meeting on my own here. I apologize. I'm over here talking away. That's why I'm like, no, don't go anywhere. So I was just gonna, I just wanted to mention to Mark and Tom that in the future, not for this step, but in the future, I think the non-criminal violations absolutely need to be used for these establishments, especially with the repetitive violations like this. Because unfortunately, when you hit somebody's wallet, they'll pay attention. So, this was 20 things on that sheet that they would be fined $100 a violation.
It's an
Whatever the case.
It's an escalating fee schedule.
Okay.
But,
So
we can charge that right now, and I think we should.
what would be, well, we'd have to take that into consideration. Do you know what the fine would be?
Depends on the criminal violation, the non-criminal. We could add it all up. Amy knows she's got to pay for the extra inspections. So we can do that tallying and figure out what that's going to be.
Do you need a board approval for it, or you can do that on your own?
Well,
No.
maybe, we can do the tabulation and then from there decide what the amount will be.
You're good.
We've had others too, so we should treat everyone the same. And maybe at this point, there we go. There they are.
Oh, look at that.
And I granted it's only the 7th, but I think, I'm okay with moving forward. I don't know. I don't know if I feel comfortable with finding her now when it was, you know, last week, but I think in general we should be from this point forward. Because we'd have to sit here and tally it up, and
Work and help us out is the COVID-19. The business is 1/3 of the business, and we.
That's, Amy.
Yes, yeah.
That's okay. We've made a significant expenditure to bring us into compliance. Not to mention, we do have the DEP that may be in excess of $10,000 to come up with the clean bill of health. And I'm not saying it's a substitute, but I'm just saying, given the current situation, I think that if we can.
Yeah, I mean, you also she was also closed for 6 days. I'm sure that was an impact as well.
I think Diane, you make a great point. I think that moving forward, we have to look at this insistent. I think in all fairness, look, let's be honest about it. We've got Amy here for nearly an hour, and Charlie's a very nice guy, but I'm sure he's not working for free tonight. So on top of that and the other expenses that Amy's incurred, I would say that she's probably has been hit pretty hard in the pocket. But I think we talked about it earlier. Aside from these non-criminal fines, Amy, there are much deeper consequences if we walk into a situation, anything close to the other thing. We're going to be looking at whatever the harshest penalty moving forward is going to be, and that's
You're so good at articulating a motion. Would you like to take a shot at a motion for Cherry Blossom? Do we want
I moved it at this point. We consider everything pending with Cherry Blossom to be considered as fines incurred and up to speed, and that the expectations moving forward are those as outlined by our food inspection program and our food inspectors, and that they continue to follow that code specifically and adhere to it to the letter of the law, and that moving forward from this day, any inspections and any violations will be subject to non-criminal violation fees and penalties to the fullest extent of the law.
I just would like to add, I will go along with that because I believe in Ashland businesses, and because I think she comes to us with honesty tonight. I think the expenses incurred by this are of her own volition, but I do think that she's going to incur quite a bit, and I really believe her, and I'm with you, Judy. Take my vote on that. I believe that you are going to never let this happen again.
Oh, never happen again. I guarantee it.
All right. Can I get a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye, KG.
Aye, Diane. All right. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Charlie. And
thank you.
Yep, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, you're all set also, I guess?
Thank you, Tom.
Oh, thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Ed, you're up. Let's talk about COVID-19.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's been a busy couple of weeks. One thing I wanted to mention, I'm sure some of you have seen it. The state has now been reporting on their probable cases of COVID. So I thought it was important to bring that information back to the town. You should have all received today the spreadsheet that is now also posted on our website with that same explanation. So one of the misconceptions is if somebody goes for testing and they want just serum testing, so just having their blood tested, If that comes back positive, that unfortunately lets us know that yes, they have been exposed to COVID, but it doesn't let us know if they're actively contagious. So what's supposed to happen is when somebody goes for a serum test, they're also supposed to have a PCR test, to have a swab also. There's a couple of facilities that just don't seem to do it that way, but just for the board, just so you understand, we still have to trace these people just like we do a confirmed case. So between Nancy, myself, and Amy, we're actually contacting these people, and a majority of them, we're actually sending them for a PCR test because technically they need to be in isolation till we have a confirmation on that. So I thought it was important because more and more people are starting to get those serum tests. So I wanted to be able to show you that in a graph, what's actually really happening and the testing that's going on for Ashland. Any questions on that at all?
No.
No? Okay. And again, that is on our website now. Also, so with the reopening of phase 3, step 1, as most of you know, our gyms were able to reopen in Ashland. We have 5 of them. So what I did yesterday was I wanted to get on top of this because obviously, as you all know, the state didn't release the actual guidelines till Friday night. So what I did yesterday was I actually went out and visited all of the gyms, the 5 gyms, spent quite a bit of time at each one, and I brought all the guidelines with me and gave everybody a packet of what we are going to expect for them to do under the guidelines. So I went through the checklist with them. I went through the attestation form with them where they had to post it. I made sure that their showers were closed. We made sure equipment was separated 14 feet. We talked about when mask use needed to be, when you didn't need to use it. And I also made sure that all the businesses were very clear that they are required to keep a log of their frequently touched surfaces cleaning protocol. So I showed them how, just set up a spreadsheet or however they wanted to do it. One question did come up when I went to Anytime Fitness yesterday, because they have staffed hours and unstaffed hours where people can go in. And so I wasn't sure how that actually met within the guidelines, because the guideline states that a staff member will always be available to clean equipment and frequently touch surfaces. So what I did yesterday was I actually reached out to some other boards of health that have Anytime Fitnesses there. And they were all like, well, that's actually a really good question. And ironically, I did put a call into DPH for an answer. And at today's 3 o'clock conference call with DPH, Mark was probably on it, they were actually very clear about that these 24-hour gyms cannot be open if there is no staff member there. So what I did today was I went at 3:30, I went back to Anytime Fitness and I let the manager know that, hey, you've got to come into compliance with this and you've got to have a staff member there whenever the facility is going to be open. And I said, you will be shut down if you violate this. So I was very clear, and we'll kind of have to check on that. But again, went out and did all the education. And then today, I actually went out to some of our restaurants again, just to do more COVID education. Make sure that everything was done. I went to Townhouse Pizza. I went to Ashland Pizza Palace, Seasons. So I've been trying to make these stops, and I'm doing it all educational. A lot of them are they're just confused, because some of the guidelines have changed. So just going out there, being an ear for them, making sure they have all the proper paperwork.
Ed, can I ask you a question too?
Sure.
Just because of Cherry Blossom, there was one establishment that was was in violation recently. So under the current standards, are all of our food establishments inspected and up to compliance?
For COVID, you mean?
Yeah, COVID. Related.
So I'm not, I'd have to work with Mark on that. I'm not 100% sure we've literally been to every single one yet. we'd have to compile a list to make sure that we have. So again,
Excuse me, I think Jen, were you just going to say something? Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, so this one thing, if we start to really go through that spreadsheet, what I'd like to, sorry for the background. So what I'd really like to do is figure out, so I know Mark has hit all of the food establishments. However, we have to determine whether all of those were hit after we received the guidelines for phase 2. So really, the governor came out with a lot more very specific guidelines around what restaurants have to do as they start to open up for outside seating. And then again, those were added on to when we did indoor seating. But when restaurants were doing takeout, I think that the guidelines, I was trying to sort of do a timeline back today to try to figure out, because the guidelines have changed, but I think it was relatively general in terms of, you're following DPH's guidelines. There's some basic, all businesses have to hit these things, like, you should try to social distance, people should wear masks, but there's very specific things that all these businesses, these restaurants have to, it's mandated now as part of the requirements that are sector specific. And so I know Ed went out and talked to a few people. Mark went out very early in June. And so we need to determine whether they actually were received the newest checklist.
Right. Okay.
We need to do all of them. So I think that Ed and Mark can work on that tomorrow. That would be really helpful.
I was going to say that would be good. Obviously with the cherry blossom situation, there was a lot going on, and one of them was COVID, which of course I know we all take very serious. So I just want to make sure that, I know Ed, you mentioned educating. So let's just, if we can, make sure. At least the food establishments are covered. I understand we have to branch out a little bit, but I just want to make sure that they're knowledgeable, especially when they're asked questions.
Right.
Judy, did you have a question?
Was I before you, KG?
No, you were before me. Yeah, go ahead.
So I need to understand. So Ed goes out for COVID, and he's now filling out a form.
That's the new program he's trying out. Yep.
This has been like a few weeks, right?
Yeah, that's the new food code program that he's trying out.
Okay. So when we went out before, so that kind of requires him to kind of walk around the place and look around. It feels like it does. It feels like you go in the kitchen too, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Check out the bathrooms and the hand washing. Like, I'm into hand washing major league. So when I saw that failed twice, I was like, oh my gosh. The previous one. So when we go out, we're going to have a consistent, like, we don't just walk in and hand them a flyer. We go through with them. We show them where they need to make changes and what the reason why they have to make these changes. And am I correct?
Yeah. And Judy, let me also tell you. So what I do, as remember, we talked about this free section of the Food Code Pro that allows us to create an account for free and do these COVID inspections. That's what it was set up for. So one of the things I do, I actually have a blank of that I take with me when I go. And I'm making sure I'm covering everything step by step with the manager or the owner of the restaurant. But then I bring all the standards with me. I bring a copy of all the standards, a copy of the checklist, and a copy of the attestation form that they have to have posted.
So that's like, I swear,
it's almost like their self-certification.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And then what I tell them, listen, when I get back to my desk, I'm going to enter all this into the computer, which I do, and I send them to all of you also. And I say, this is the checklist that we're using. So when Mark or I come back, this is exactly what we're going to be looking for.
And so you told me, or the board, that this will automatically update any new changes, or if things get eliminated.
That's the food code program, yes. But also, if there's any changes to COVID, they are making changes to this section of the website also.
Okay. So you submitted, so you started using these, but you gave us all a checklist, and it only had, not a checklist, you gave us a worksheet, Excel worksheet. and it had COVID inspections, but it stopped on June 2nd. Why?
So, okay, so that's the spreadsheet that Mark created for him to document which restaurants he was going to. This was prior to us having any other software available, because Mark was not using the WinWham program to do his COVID stuff.
Okay.
So that was, and this was before I was helping doing this portion of it. So that was Mark's, I had Mark create that spreadsheet so he can document what locations he was going to and when.
Well, he has access to the, excuse me for a second, Judy, but Ed, the new program, I mean, you're using it now, but Mark can use it now, right? Because it's a
correct.
Okay.
He can use it. Yeah.
So you, okay. All right. So that will, so to speak, take care of that. I mean, at least then, you know, Mark doesn't have to worry about entering it in the system. I mean, I don't know if you want to still keep that spreadsheet, but at least if Mark goes out and does one, he'll do the same thing. And then so it's all together.
Yeah, and I can work with Mark tomorrow because I know Mark, before he goes back on vacation, I can get Mark with that section of the website and show him how to do it. It's pretty quick.
All right.
So so what I'm getting, so if we only have until 6/2, on 6/1 and on 5/7, substantial
You're muted, Judy.
Sorry, I think I did that.
Oh.
So did we not do any after 6/2 at all until just Tom going around?
So you'd have to check with Mark on that.
Mark?
You're talking specifically about cherry blossoms?
COVID.
Well, no, about, Ed sent us a worksheet, because this was my idea, to pull all these together, because when we got all the ones that you had done from years past, it was like looking like there's a lot of the things that come up the same for the restaurant, as you can see. So that was like concerning, but like, I don't know, maybe this new software, somebody can correct me, is going to be able to like do this for us. I think this is really good data. Because if people know that we're looking at the past as well as how they're doing today, they should be improving, not getting worse in this.
Mm-hmm.
Judy got muted again.
You too, Diane, you're muted.
Are you muting me on purpose?
I'm getting tired. I apologize. I think, but the thing is I think the thing is if Ed's using the program and Mark's using the data, we need to keep the data together, because where you were going with that, I think is that if it if X establishment, if they're out of COVID compliance because of signage, and then a week later they're out of COVID, we need to have it all together.
Right.
So,
right.
And I don't know if Ed, when you do those inspections, even though you have those inspections, maybe you guys work it out that you just update that database so it's clear. I don't know.
Well, I think we should be using the software, because it's more complete and it's answering all the questions. It's not just a document on a spreadsheet. I think.
And I think what Jude was also going with that is that, so June 2nd, we have inspections done, but now you guys are doing them again. So between June 2nd and let's say July 2nd, for 30 days, there wasn't any inspections? It's a question. It's not a statement.
Again, yeah, mine, any of the ones I did are on that software. And again, I don't know when the last time Mark updated the spreadsheet, so you'd have to check with Mark on that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look at the spreadsheet. I think you will find that once they were done for signage, we started rolling into camps and swimming pools and other COVID-19 gyms. But we'll look at it and make sure there was nothing in between that didn't get populated.
Well, just because the rules have changed so much since then that, even, going to Cherry Blossom, and again, I think the board knows there was another establishment we went to as well. They weren't COVID compliant. So, I mean, I don't want to minimize the fact that there's, food code violations, but the COVID requirements are concerning as well. So
okay.
I think we just need to make, yeah.
Okay. So just, and you're not going to have a license, Ed. Mark and Tom will, correct?
Correct.
You can do the COVID.
Correct.
But so you're sending them to the board, but will we be able to populate this website we want to the documents on the website, like to
Yeah,
show that?
and that's going to be part of the training
Okay,
that they're going to give for us.
okay. All right, that's all I have.
All right.
I had a question.
Sure. Go ahead, KJ.
This is for Mark. Do we know that we have hit all the food inspections for all of the permitted facilities in Ashland by now?
KG, is that like the first round, you mean?
Yes.
So we're trying to prioritize. So on the first round, I've been asking Tom to do the grocery stores and the restaurants as priority one. And then the smaller retail stores like Family Dollar, Dollar Tree. Well, Dollar Tree doesn't even need to be inspected, but places like that carry some perishables, such as your convenience stores, they're in a priority 2 level.
I just want to make sure that every facility where they cook food and sell or supply needs to be taken care of. That's important.
I did. I'm glad you brought that up because I did mention that to Tom. I know he's going to work with you, Mark, because of, again, a couple of things that have showed up lately with inspections. I asked him, and I'm sure the board will concur, all establishments need to be inspected like ASAP.
The first.
And again, I know Tom doesn't do the COVID. That's why I was mentioning about the COVID inspections. I want to make sure that every single food establishment here in town has an inspection of their facility as well as a COVID inspection, and like pronto. Not, Tom did give me a window, which we can talk offline about what his window is, but we need to step it up. And if again, and I'm looking at everybody here, I mean, if you need help from the board, absolutely reach out, because at least we can try to help or put together a plan or whatever. We need to get this stuff done, because the last 2 establishments, and I know I'm assuming it's a fluke that we had 2 establishments, but
I had also wanted us to send an email to every establishment to make sure they still have their CFM working for them. That's a major thing to do, because even with the CFMs that we have, things are not in good condition.
I think
but without a CFM, because that's the first person they will like to lay off, because that's the highest paid job in the system other than the manager. So we need to make sure that that's taken care of. So just send an email. Just send an email.
Updating it.
Yeah, just send an email. That may be easier.
I'm sorry,
isn't that part of the inspection?
It is part of the inspection, but it's better to send them a warning ahead of time by a general email saying that if you have fired your CFM, hire him back.
Yeah. Why don't if we're all set with COVID? Is everybody all set with the COVID discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. One for Ed. Are we taking care of childcare facilities? Are they being inspected? Because I just sent an email from another state where they have found more of COVID issues with the children.
So we can certainly do that and go in with the checklist there also. I just want to mention one more thing. One of the other things that we've been doing is all the youth sports, like Metro West Sports, Ashland Youth Baseball, Ashland Youth Soccer. We've had to get all of their plans, look at their plans and make sure they are compliant with COVID. And so we've done that with quite a few of these organizations to make sure they're all set. We don't even allow them to reserve our fields until they send us a complete plan that we approve.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure the board knew that we're doing that also.
So do you know by now how many childcare facilities exist in Ashland?
So I know the Cedar Street Club is open, and I know the one next to Shaw's. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it. I believe they are open also.
And is it Dream Station? Is the Dream Station open too?
Dream Station is open.
Yes, Dream Station is open. Yes, they actually called me today with a question about a family, if they should let them in. We gave them the advice on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would appreciate if you can step up their inspection and then
I can actually do some of those tomorrow.
Okay, all right.
Now that we've told everybody.
And get us a list of facilities that exist.
Don't do it tomorrow.
Sorry, I'm getting tired. That's why I keep muting you, Judy. If everybody's all set, why don't we move on to the IMA for nursing services? Mark, do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
It's up to you, Diane. I gave you kind of a little rundown a little earlier today of where we stand, but we'll let you start.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I basically, it's just an update. I mean, we're waiting for some questions to be answered, as well as, I guess it's questions to be answered, right, Mark? I think, I mean.
Yes, they said that they will fairly distribute the actual work based on what each town's paying. But Jen and I had a discussion today too about that. Is what does that mean? If they could better define some areas. So we're waiting.
You're saying Jen Ball, right?
Yes, Jen Ball.
Okay, I didn't know if there was somebody from MAPC.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, Jen Ball.
Okay, yeah. So we're basically they're working on the agreement, and then once it's finalized, we'll get it to Lisa because there was some questions and so forth. So we're still moving forward, and then we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting. Is that pretty much?
Yeah, but can we get a list of items that we want the nurse to do for us?
Did you see the job description? Did everybody see?
Yeah, the job description, it may be a general description, but do we have a list of tasks that we want to get accomplished?
There's a couple of things on that job description that I highlighted actually. Forget about grammar and spelling, but in the statement of duties, in particular, it refers to the employee performs many and varied professional nursing duties to reduce the incidence of disease and promote health issues and well-being of residents of Framingham. And that's all, it stops there, the sentence. It should mention the Metro West Shared Public Health Services Initiative or all 4 towns.
Yep.
And then later under general duties on page 2, it says the time will be split accordingly, but I guess for the job description, that's plenty enough because the job description is for the person hiring the job, but I guess we'll need a clearer picture of that. Those were the two things that stuck out at me. And they may have just been oversights because it's probably just a job description for Framingham's health nurse that they modified.
Jen, did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to add. So I did talk to Mark today about it. You know, I know that Ron at the last meeting brought up a concern, which I share, is so we obviously pay for a certain number of hours right now, and we want to make sure, you know, obviously when you regionalize, you want to have at least that same baseline, and hopefully because you have sort of a shared pool, that you actually increase your resources, and so it's not, you know, we actually gain some more public health services or nursing services rather than sort of, you know, I'm not comfortable with saying it will be this board will determine that the services will be distributed fairly. Like, to me, that's not something that I would put in front of you all to review or put in front of Michael and or the board of select or the select board to review, because we don't know. That doesn't mean it doesn't give us any, it doesn't define it. It doesn't give anything tangible. But also just beyond sort of flu clinics, when I looked at the job description, I thought it was relatively very focused on communicable diseases and vaccination clinics. And so I know that this board, I know that I have talked a lot about some other sort of educational, you know, there's relationships maybe with the senior center, that we want to explore relationships with the school and the school nurses. So, you know, I do think there's a lot of work that has to be done. I did ask Mark while he was on vacation that since we're now into this fiscal year, that the agreement should be prorated, because obviously we're going to continue our current nursing situation, so that we at least have, you know, we have somebody for 5 hours. And so they did agree to that. But I do think we have to work out. I always think in IMAs, the devil's always in the details, and I don't think we're quite there yet. So I think we have a lot of work to do.
To add on to what Jen just said, and to further Ron's point as well, last meeting I did just a quick numerical breakdown, and I stuck Holliston in there instead of Hopkinton, but I just based it on population. So based on the population of the 4 towns that I polled, including Holliston instead of Hopkinton, we sit somewhere around just under 14%, 13.95% of the population of those 4 towns. So if the time distribution is based on population, 14% of 37.5 hours is 5.25 hours. We're already at 5 hours. So it's something to think about in that framework.
Chris,
Yeah.
As Jen said, it's going to be in addition to what we have.
Okay.
So the
No,
5 hours that you have is with whoever we have now.
If we're
And with
doubling, that's great.
5 and a quarter will be additional. That's
Well,
am I
we're
correct,
not-
Jen? Jen, you muted yourself.
So that's certainly what, I was hoping for, and at least I would like us to know what we're getting so that we can have that determination, right? So if we typically just still maintain that 5 hours relatively consistently, but our residents have access to several different flu clinics, our school children might be able to, be inoculated faster or easier or more efficiently. Like those things, I think we just need to weigh. I just don't think, with the IMA, that the draft that we have, those details weren't in there. So it's really hard to sort of make that determination. We're sort of guessing that this group of directors will determine, but how is that all worked out? How's that communicated to each town? So I did ask Mark, we have a similar, our jail diversion program through the police department is with, I believe, 5 towns. There's a case manager that's hired by advocates. But they are sort of assigned, there's assigned, it's tenuous, obviously, because it's crisis management. But, we may have the counselor for 1 day a week where they're actually doing some sort of work with our police department. They may, in fact, get called out to a crisis in one of the other towns. But it was those type of details were worked out in the agreement. And so, I asked Mark to get that as an example. I'd like to see just how they outline that. And again, I think that once we have some of these details, council can certainly help us refine it so we're all comfortable.
And I just want to remind the board, when we first started that was one of our main goals, is to make the services easier for residents, because we were dealing with the school age kids getting vaccinated prior to school. So that's how it started. And I mean, meeting with the group, I mean, they understood where we were coming from. So, I think the numbers, I mean, I know Chris sent the numbers to us, and I do believe we're going to get more services than we're allowed to offer now because of the funding. But like I said, I think just a more level of detail on it, I think will help everybody make sure everybody has everything covered.
Yeah, the other thing is that we don't know whether the schools are going to open now in the fall.
No, but I don't know that. But
if they're not opening, then the school children may not get the vaccinations that they need. So there would not be a time spent on that. Yeah,
I'm assuming people would keep up on them, but.
Mark, do we get information from Framingham for the kids that we send there, how many they've done for our school age kids?
They did that a couple of years ago, and I'd have to look for that data, but they did send, well, they requested we meet with them 2 years ago because they were vaccinating the majority of the children that were in need because we couldn't offer the service.
Right.
Numbers, I'd have to check to see if they gave us a firm number or not.
Oh, they opened the downtown clinic, so I wondered if they're giving us any idea of
we did talk about that at one of our meetings, and even forget about the IMA, of course we want that as well, right. But it would be nice if we get even once a month just a report letting us know what vaccinations or what services they're providing us, and of course right. Continue that, because we want to make, obviously we want to show that we're getting
right. Because
isn't there a DPH website in the system that Mark, you were able to sign on and get the information out of that?
I would have to check that, KJ. I think
because every person who's vaccinated gets logged in there.
In the town?
In the DPH, because that's a central location where everybody is logged in.
No.
So they can extract out of it.
Would it give us how many Ashland people went to Framingham?
No, I guess Mark and probably Nancy has access to those systems. Okay. They should be able to extract it out of it.
Yeah, Mark, if you could look into that. But I mean, if Framingham's going to be overseeing our nursing program, I mean, they should provide us, and I know we talked about it, provide us with reports, I'll call it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if, you know, we're selling this IMA and we're saying, you know, we're going to have access to all these clinics and everything. Why don't we should have some documentation as to, okay, what have they done for us so far?
Right.
And
They have access to it now.
right.
Right. Even with the past information, that will be very helpful for us to find out where we are and what we need.
Right.
So I would suggest that you make that part of the IMA though. So that's something that we can hold, you know, we're all agreeing that that the city of Framingham would actually do it probably for all of the towns. I think, you know, obviously it's twofold. One, it gives each town some level of understanding on the services you're getting. So so in 2 years, we'd have to decide whether we want to continue this.
Okay.
Although it has this automatic approval, which we should just think about. But, you know, so there will be some discussion leading up to whether we'd want to continue our partnership, which, you know, one would assume that we would, but we would like to have some information around that. But then also, I think that, and Mark and I talked about this, if this is just a starting point in terms of what we want to do for public health nursing services, because there is this public health education component that I think that we've all wanted to get to, and we haven't been able to based on the number of hours that we are able to pay a nurse. And so, you know, there may be opportunities for regional grants that maybe, right, the town of Ashland might not be actually eligible as a single town, but if it's a regional initiative, we may be more competitive. And so I think sort of showing this type of partnership, you know, so I do think that's a twofold. It's really beneficial for everybody.
I like data.
I do too.
Don't blame you.
All right. Is everybody all set with that? Anybody have any further questions or anything? All right, moving along, Mark. 7:54, just giving the time check. Update on the FY20, FY21 budget.
You're muted.
Mark, you're muted.
Muted.
Now I'm doing it.
There you go. You're tired too.
This is the new sign.
So the FY20 is being finalized. We've got a few more bills for the landfill coming through our routine testing, and I'll have a wrap up of that at the next meeting. And our FY21 budget is a new budget, not much different. Again, we're going to prorate the nursing money that we spend. Whatever we take out of that budget will be prorated into the IMA, as we just discussed. So we're at the new step for FY21, and we'll, believe it or not, in the next maybe 5 months, be working on FY22.
Wow.
Mark, just curious. I know we could talk tomorrow with Jen or Lisa, but do we ever get that landfill bill taken care of?
I don't think so. I haven't heard back from Lisa. No, it wasn't Lisa. It was one of her associates that was handling it. So
yeah, could you put that on your radar? I just, when you mentioned about
he never got back to me. We did speak, so I will have to try to find out what's going on. I haven't heard from him in almost a month.
Okay. Another question, kind of talking about, we just talked about the IMA and stuff. So as far as I know, with the FY21 budget, we're going to keep, Nancy's going to be working on COVID cases even once we go to the IMA, correct?
Well, according to what Jen and I spoke about, that is correct.
Okay, so Nancy will still be working with us, and then if Framingham can bring her on to do nursing stuff, they'll, so to speak, pick her up or whatever.
Yeah, so Diane, we'll have to, we'll work with Ed and sort of determine the trends. Obviously, nobody sort of knows what the fall is going to bring. And so I think we'll have to watch it over the next few weeks, make a determination and sort of a staffing plan as we lead in, or at least an idea of staffing, because obviously depending on what the schools will be doing will really dictate the availability of the school nurses, because they were incredibly helpful when we were really dealing with, a lot of cases and, several different cases that were coming in daily. And so I think we have to be, that's obviously a fluid situation that we'll have to continue.
Is that something that we should check with Framingham also for the IMA?
So it's definitely something we talked about, so obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic that we're not sure, is this going to end in 2 years, are we going to have a vaccination? What's that look like? Because obviously that type of mass and vaccination would be much different than the normal flu clinics. So I think we do have to talk about it. There is some language in there that you could, that we could be sort of quote unquote assessed for emergency situations that are above and beyond the normal, which obviously COVID-19 is certainly above the normal. So we would, and then obviously the way the federal assistance that comes in, we have to sort of figure that out because
Sorry.
FEMA eligible, some of it we can use CARES Act money. So, we have to, I don't know how that would work with an IMA. So we definitely need to sort of dig into those type of details as well.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Now, if you assume the schools are not going to be open, are the nurses rendering any services to the students if the school is not open?
Well, I'm definitely not assuming that the schools are not going to be open. I think they're working really hard to figure out several plans, one of which would be sort of in person. I think the state is requiring all the schools to do one plan for in person, as all students coming back. One is a hybrid where you might have some different groups that are going at different times, and then a remote learning. So my understanding based on the guidance from the governor is that the districts all have to do those plans, and then determinations will be made. I don't know if they will be made at the state level or the district level. I don't know how much flexibility each district will have. I do know that the school nurses, while they were incredibly helpful to us, they were also doing work for the district, for the school, and for the students. I don't know what their tasks were, but they were definitely working, and the COVID piece of it was sort of extra.
Okay, all right.
I remembered my other question, Mark. I went to town meeting, but we had voted to increase the expenditures out of the revolving accounts. Are we good? That passed?
Jen, I need your help on that. I don't know. I wasn't at town meeting. I was on vacation.
Jen's giving me the thumbs up. Okay. I was there, but I just went, okay. So we're all set with that. Okay. That was my other question.
Yeah, that one was part of the consent article, Diane.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All right. Moving right along. Minutes review from May 19th. The one June 2nd, we're going to put off to the next meeting, but May 19th. Has everybody had a chance to look at them?
Yes, I have no problem.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye,
Aye,
KG.
Chris.
Aye, Diane. Okay, and then the Mary Mortensen Public Health Award. I know Chris did a wonderful job.
I actually, just in having it in front of me, found a couple of quick edits, which I can either send to you, Laura, or if you want, I can just point them out right here if you want. Did you want me to read the proclamation, or did you want it to?
Well, I think we should hold off on it because we,
Okay.
I just, I just want to hold off.
Yep.
So
Okay, then Laura, I'll mail them to you.
Sure. Okay.
Next time when you put the thing on the agenda, please remove the question mark before.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. It was supposed to be a bullet point. But.
All right.
So what do we want to do with that? Do we want to try to just have it as a Zoom meeting? We haven't set
have
a date.
them come before the board at our next meeting and get the award.
I think that
put the proclamation on the screen like we did with the worksheet today, so that people watching can see it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think that just in the interest of letting it be time relevant, that we should do it at our next meeting, or at the next meeting that we can get them, or some of them, to come. But I also think if we ever get back to a normal where we're in a physical space, it would be kind of nice to invite them and maybe do a shorter presentation where we would, just take some pictures of them getting the proclamation and the holding up the plaque.
Okay, so our next meeting is the 21st. So we want to see, Laura, can you reach out to them and see if they're available that night, and we can do it like 6:10?
Sure.
And then if not, we'll just move, if they're busy, we can do it the next meeting.
Okay.
And then we're going to put Donna Walsh's nomination will be on the next agenda as well.
Are we talking about the next agenda?
We are.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to start talking about Triple E.
Okay.
Is anybody concerned about the swine flu
Oh, that's coming in? Okay.
that's coming?
I'm worried about anything that has flu after it.
WHO found it in China, but they said that's at least the last report I saw, they have it pretty well contained, but
Okay, so just want to like keep an ear to the ground on that one, but I know that probably kids are dying to start sports up again, and you know, if we're going to have to contend in August, is it, or with Triple E stopping playing at dusk, that kind of thing, we should probably have Mark and Laura pull your all the things that we did last year, you know, so that we have everything ready to go, sort of, you know,
And maybe put together a plan of what we should do.
Yeah.
Right. ABCDs of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, just get it lined up and teed up, because I'm certain that we're going to need it.
Right.
I could be wrong, but.
Well, then we can take a peek at it at the next meeting to see, you know, and then we at least have a plan. I mean, it could change, but just have at least the baseline.
Triple E preparedness.
Mhm.
There you go. Triple E preparedness.
I like it.
All right. And anybody have anything else?
Nothing.
All right. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. KG.
Can I have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Hi, KG.
Hi,
Aye.
Yeah,
Chris.
8:04 p.m. Not too bad, right?
right.
too
Not
bad.
too bad. Not too
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.